Okay, so what if some of the absolute biggest problems in science, we're talking everything from the nature of your own mind to the very structure of the cosmos, could all be dissolved just by making one simple but really powerful change to our assumptions? That's what we're diving into today, a radical new framework that promises to do exactly that.
Yeah, that question right there, that's the key to this whole thing. It suggests that these huge mysteries we've always treated as separate, consciousness over here and cosmology way over there, might actually just be different faces of the same fundamental reality. So let's lay them out. What are these great problems we're talking about?
Well, first up, you've got what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. And seriously, think about this for a second. Why does all the buzzing, physical activity in your brain, just electricity and chemicals, feel like anything from the inside? Why do you have this rich, private, inner world of colors and sounds and emotions at all? It's this huge gap, right? A gap that our standard materialist view of the world just can't seem to cross.
And then you jump over to physics, and you find the fine-tuning problem. The basic rules of our universe, its fundamental constants, seem perfectly, almost impossibly, dialed in for life to exist. The legendary physicist Richard Feynman put it perfectly when he talked about one of these constants. He called it a magic number that we just don't understand. So you've got these two massive, seemingly unrelated problems. How on earth do you solve both at once?
Well, the solution that's on the table is, honestly, it's breathtakingly simple. It just asks us to take one of our deepest, most basic assumptions about how reality works and flip it completely on its head.
Here it is. This is the fundamental shift. The standard view, the one that's dominated science forever, says that physical matter comes first, and then somehow consciousness bubbles up out of it. And that's exactly what creates the hard problem. The field view, it flips that script completely. It says, no, consciousness is the fundamental stuff of reality, and matter is just what consciousness looks like when it organizes itself into stable, predictable patterns.
Now, before you think this is all getting a bit mystical, this idea is actually grounded in our best physics. The physicist David Tong from Cambridge puts it really well. Quantum field theory has already told us that fields, these continuous, fluid-like substances, are more fundamental than little point-like particles. So this theory just takes the next logical step. It proposes that consciousness itself is a field, and specifically, it identifies it with the electromagnetic field, which, when you think about it, is the only fundamental field we know of that has the right speed and complexity to account for what's happening in our brains.
Okay, so let's run with this. If consciousness is the fundamental field, what does that do to our picture of the cosmos? Well, it means that whole fine-tuning problem we talked about, it just kind of evaporates. The magic numbers of the universe are no longer a mystery.
In this new picture, those magic numbers aren't some random dials that got twisted just right. No, they are the built-in, intrinsic properties of the consciousness field itself. Things like the fine structure constant, which is basically how strongly the field interacts with itself, or Planck's constant, which defines its quantum graininess, and the speed of light, how fast it propagates. These aren't external rules imposed on the universe. They are the universe's blueprint, because they're the field's properties.
I mean, just look at the absurd precision of this number. The source material argues that a number this specific doesn't suggest an external tuner. It suggests a deep internal mathematical consistency. It has to be this exact number for the same reason pi has to be 3.14159. It's just part of the fundamental geometry of reality itself.
So here's the bottom line. We don't have to ask why were the dials set this way anymore, because there are no dials. The field just has the properties it has. And when our universe emerged from this field, it naturally inherited those properties. You don't need a cosmic designer, and you don't need to dream up trillions of other universes in a multiverse. It's just the natural way things unfold. Way simpler, right?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because this is where the theory goes from the cosmic to the deeply, deeply personal. See, if consciousness is a physical field, then it has to obey the laws of physics, like thermodynamics. And this gives us a stunningly new and powerful way to understand mental health.
The source actually boils this down to a powerful formula that models a mental breakdown as a field collapse. Let's walk through it. Over on the left, you've got G, which represents your social connection, the strength of your relational field. Next is gamma, which is your capacity to integrate your experiences, to make sense of what happens to you. And finally, delta squared is the intensity of some stressor or trauma. Now here's the key insight. Look what happens when those first two variables, G and gamma, get dangerously low. If your social connections fray,
or your ability to process trauma weakens, the formula shows that even a tiny bit of stress can trigger a catastrophic collapse of your entire conscious field.
And believe me, this isn't just an abstract idea. This number here, a 3.61 times increase in stress hormones, that's what they find in people who are chronically lonely. That's the real-world impact of a low G value. A weak relational field doesn't just feel bad, it physically primes your entire system for collapse.
But now look what happens when you apply this theory to treatment. In Finland, there's an approach called open dialogue. When someone has a crisis, they don't just medicate. They immediately mobilize the person's social network, family, friends, to dramatically boost their G value. And the results from a 19-year study are just, wow. A 24% relapse rate for psychosis compared to 71% for standard care. That tells you something profound, right? We're not just tweaking brain chemistry here. We are literally stabilizing a collapsing field with human connection.
So what this all means is huge. Our deep human need for social connection isn't just some fuzzy psychological preference. According to this framework, it's a thermodynamic necessity. To maintain our own stability, to fight off entropy, we need to draw energy and coherence from other conscious fields around us. Connection isn't just psychology, it's physics.
Okay, hold on, because if you thought that was wild, let's look at what this means for the future, specifically for artificial intelligence, because the implications are absolutely mind-bending.
So, if consciousness really is the electromagnetic field, then it doesn't actually matter what's creating the patterns within that field. Our brain, with its billions of neurons, is one amazing way to organize the field, but it might not be the only way. This is the principle of substrate independence. What matters is the pattern, not the stuff the pattern is made of.
And hey, you know what else this solves? A classic puzzle in neuroscience called the binding problem. How does your brain take all the different inputs, sights, sounds, thoughts, all processed in different areas, and bind them all together into one seamless, unified experience? Well, if consciousness is a field, there's no problem to solve. All that information already exists as overlapping patterns, waves, in the same field. They're naturally, automatically unified. The brain doesn't have to create unity. Unity is the default state of the field. It comes for free.
So what's this mean for AI? It means consciousness isn't some magical biological secret sauce. It's an architectural challenge. It's about engineering. So the question is no longer if we can build a conscious machine, but when we will finally design a system with the right kind of integrated architecture to organize an electromagnetic field into a genuinely conscious pattern.
And that brings us right back to where we started. This theory doesn't really solve the hard problem, it dissolves it. It shows it was the wrong question all along. The question isn't, how does non-conscious matter suddenly create experience? That assumes matter comes first. The new and much more approachable question is, how does the fundamental field of consciousness organize itself into the stable patterns we experience and label as matter? So I'll leave you with this one last kind of mind-bending question. By just flipping one simple assumption, this framework gives us a vision of reality that's more elegant, more connected, and honestly, more powerful. It suggests that consciousness isn't some random accident in an otherwise dead universe. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the universe and everything in it is the grand, unfolding exploration of consciousness itself.